Good morning, friends. How's everyone today? Monday, June the 15th. Seems amazing. We're halfway through the month of June. Hmm. How's everything look and sound? I don't like to evoke uh, the gods, but I think yesterday the tech gods were against me. Hmm. So I put something up in the top of the chat. I heard some news yesterday um, that the recording of Ajahn Jayasaro's uh, recent Q&A with the Buddhist group at Stanford, they're hoping to have that posted up later this week or sometime this week. So I put that information in the very top of the chat if people want to scroll up and see that. But it's just a link to the event page that they had before. And I don't know, maybe they'll change that, or maybe that YouTube link, once the talk is edited, will switch from private to live. So, and I want to thank Adil for sending me. He had done a screen recording of some of it. So thanks for sending that along. That's good. So for those of you joining the chanting, I think me and Venerable Rakito are kind of discovering how to harmonize with each other a little bit better. So that's kind of nice. We're not trying to make it beautiful, but we don't want to add any suffering unnecessarily to the experience for people who want to join us. So, mhm. And I think sometime soon we might do a little change up and either start doing some more reflective chanting or do some of the Parita chanting again in the evening time. I rarely change the morning chanting, but usually we do different things in the evening chanting, and every couple weeks or something, I like to change it up a little bit. So, so what's on everyone's mind this morning? Turning towards this endeavor to make the most of our days, brighten the mind. Homage to Buddha Dhamma Sangha on a daily basis. It's a theme. This theme of the themes that you find in our chanting, and I've talked about this many times, but the themes of our chanting, and in particular, those themes that we find in the reflections on Buddha Dhamma Sangha, it's something that a lot of the teachers in Thailand, when I was training there, you'd hear come up in their Dhamma talks a lot, kind of riff on those various qualities. And Ajahn Chah himself talked a lot about Bhutto and the more profound meaning of the Buddha. Uh, in Thailand, where Buddhism has existed for so long, there's all kinds of folk beliefs, one might say, or misconceptions of the Buddha. And many Thais that I've met, for them, the Buddha is kind of very much alive or something, even though like as a being in their mind. And even though there's not, I wouldn't say there's great support for that in the suttas, but he talks about after his parinibbana not being seen by gods nor humans nor any being. So, but Ajahn Chah oftentimes would kind of riff on and reflect on Buddho, which is used as a mantra, but also the Buddha, and like, where's the Buddha now? What is the Buddha? And point more to what it means to be awake, which is the literal meaning of that word, Buddho, the awakened one. And oftentimes he would tie it to these various reflections and teachings about this kind of quality of knowing, one who knows, one who is awake and who knows their experience in a way that informs this experience of suffering and ultimately overturns, undermines it. So, and the Buddha said, one who knows the Dhamma knows the Buddha. Okay, well, I see a few questions here. I think most everyone who wants to be here is here. Zuri, any advice on how to eat if one is taking the 8 precepts? It depends. I guess there's so many factors or variables there. The Buddha himself just ate once a day. And in the early part of his teaching and the development of the communities, he didn't lay down a rule that they could only eat 1 meal a day. They could eat whenever they wanted to. And I think there was maybe sometimes that are a little more traditional to go and seek alms. Like, we have to remember that the monks aren't, it's not just about eating. I mean, they need to seek alms in the areas where they're spending time or living. And if it's anything like modern India or even modern Thailand, there's different times where people are doing the cooking and available to offer alms. So there was no restriction in the early time. So this idea of just eating only before midday obviously isn't a moral precept, meaning it's not immoral to eat after midday. And so one has to kind of, I think it's important to reflect on that, because sometimes we can relate to this precept in a way that's a bit kind of dogmatic or something, or superstitious even. And if you know a little bit about the history, where, if it was truly harmful to eat after midday or something, the Buddha probably would have addressed that early on. But it only comes up after there had been some incidents with monks going for alms very late in the day, or even at night, and some people didn't think that was appropriate. And then eventually the Buddha sort of says, "Look, I just eat 1 meal a day, and I enjoy good health, and it supports me as a meditator and a practitioner." And then he encourages the monks and kind of lays down a rule, that they're to restrict their eating to dawn to midday. So they're not spending all their time out seeking alms. So I think there's some flexibility there. Even when he lays that rule down, he doesn't mandate that they just eat 1 meal a day like he does. So, there's some flexibility there, which is good because I've known many monks and nuns over the years, and for some, eating one meal a day um, is something that they can adapt to quite easily, and they feel perfectly healthy doing that. For others, they have difficulty with that, various difficulties. So, so my advice is, listen to your body and experiment and see what sort of works for supporting your practice. And my take on the Buddha's establishment of that precept is really maybe not just to repair the relationship with the lay community who might have thought it inappropriate for the monks to be seeking alms at all times of the day, but was aiming at simplicity. So take that into consideration in taking the precepts. And Zuri, it kind of depends on how long you're taking them on. If you're taking them on for a long period of time, then you might need to sort of explore, what supports good health. It's simplicity and your desire to practice. And I think it's easy to worry a bit too much about how restricting your eating window to, say, 6 hours or something might affect your health. And there's a tendency when people start doing it to overeat. In fact, it's not a tendency. It's sometimes almost like a compulsion. You're kind of afraid to be hungry in the evening time. So, uh, and it's good to kind of risk it a little bit until you figure out what's sufficient. And then there are various tonics that one can take in the evening time if their energy is kind of flagging. So, and actually, intermittent fasting has become very fashionable or popular in the last few years, and that is how Buddhist monastics live. We eat between dawn and midday, and in the forest monastery of Thailand, almost all of them are fairly strict about eating just one meal a day. So, there's maybe a half hour that you're eating, and then 23 and a half hours until the next feeding session. So, and until modern times, monks didn't have much outside of that. They didn't even have a regular habit of drinking coffee and tea or something. In Ajahn Chah's era, they might make some medicinal tea. Like there's a bitter vine that grows in the jungles of Thailand called borapet, and that was one of the most common things that they would boil up and make a salty tea out of, or a sweet tea out of, and it's quite medicinal. You're definitely not. I don't know that one ever develops a real taste for it as like an enjoyable drink, but it was good for different health conditions, including fevers, and in the time before malaria, strong borapet tea was one of the things that people would take for that. So, duck plus bee. What do you get when you plus a duck and a bee? Duck plus bee. Gradual path. That's yeah, that is a topic I'd like to talk about a bit more. Maybe not today. Um, there's different ways that we can think and unpack that, but it's one of my favorite things to talk about with people uh, in considering Buddhist practice, because I don't think it gets enough exposure. G Pray. G Pray. Hello from Thailand. Welcome. G Pray, is that Dukkata? You can message me later. I had a question, Ajahn, about something that was asked a few days ago about anatta and the soul. What is reborn? Does this tie into the links of dependent origination and our ignorance of self? Well, Scott, that question does come up, and the Buddha never answers it. He says it's a question that is based on a misconception. So, my favorite passage in relationship to this is the Buddha says it's neither self or another that is reborn. And I like reflecting on that because it's the habits of framing everything through self are so strong in us. We can build a self out of almost anything. And it's very difficult to think about rebirth without positing a me in the past and a me in the future if I don't get enlightened. And the Buddha says that's not really the proper way to think about it. So, and oftentimes when met with that question, he just doesn't answer. He usually goes in a different direction. And in some places, he makes it clear, like it's kind of a misguided or not a very good question because it's based on a faulty supposition. So, what is reborn? Um, and it's part of the reason why, like, your time is better spent sort of examining just the phenomena of self uh, and its relationship to dukkha. So, if you want to think about something that is reborn, uh, kind of the closest I understand, the best explanation is that sort of there is this comic momentum that if it isn't resolved, um, acts as sufficient condition for coming into being. So, but personally, my own life and practice, I'm not so focused on the cosmology of it. I'm much more interested in this dynamic of suffering and the role that self plays in that. So, and in particular, sort of like how the various forms of selfing and framing our experience in terms of me and mine and myself and for me, how that relates to this proclivity towards generating tanha, and in particular, sort of tanha directed towards the sense world, tanha directed towards various notions we have of being or becoming, uh, all in this endeavor to posit happiness and satisfaction as something outside of our present experience. And I would say on some level we're sensitive to the fact that that the experience we're having now is unsatisfactory. It doesn't feel complete. It doesn't feel completely content. It doesn't feel, it's not at rest, it's at ease, it's unstable, it's incomplete, it's unsatisfactory. And on some level, our mind needs to uh, respond to that. And the typical response is positing a sort of self and imagining um, some sort of change of state. Me doing this, me being this, me being free from this, me not being this. Maybe then I'll be happy. So, and the linkage uh, between anatta and dependent origination, I'd say the strongest one is right there in the very beginning of that chain, which is like that is part of the avijja tanha, or the root of that sort of cycle that ends in dukkha. So, okay, let's see. Adil has a two-part question here. Ajahn, as I've been experiencing a growing zeal for practice lately, I find it increasingly easier and pleasant to engage with the breath. Motivation plays a great part. Nevertheless, I find that I sweat more trying to focus attention on the breath. Um, because it's 33 degrees. That might be part of it. So, yeah, why is it? I mean, it does feel uncomfortable. Like, is that sort of becoming an obstacle, Adil? I don't quite get where you're going with this. I sweat more trying to focus on the breath than on focusing something else. There are ways that one can attend to the breath and also cultivate breathing that change the state of body and mind in a way to make it more comfortable. So it's like, one can manipulate the breath in breath meditation uh, for those reasons, to make things as comfortable as possible. So, but also the only other thing that comes to mind is maybe just exploring how it is that you attend to the breath, if that's becoming an obstacle. So, good morning, Samrit. Dear Ajahn, is mercy killing that is practiced on pets part of breaking precept? Yes, I would say it is. Because there's still intention there, and even if the intention is coming out of a desire to alleviate pain and suffering, there's still the intention to take life. And I would say it always matters in what kind of karma or karma that we're making, um, what the quality of the intention is, what are the full things of the intention. So if one is doing it to sort of alleviate suffering or something, it's not identical to killing something out of ill will, irritation, rage, some more wholly unskillful sort of action, but my understanding is it really lies with just the very intention and being part of that process to end a life. So, and that's a difficult one, especially in this age of pet ownership. Um, it's a difficult one, and in talking with people through that challenge, the thing I always encourage people to sort of examine is try to be really clear what's kind of going on for one, because it's difficult to be with aging, illness, and death, and it's difficult to bear with the dying process of some this other being that is beloved to us, um, and because of that, we can kind of easily get a little confused or even deluded about what's motivating uh, this intention to end the life of our pet. So, and as much as possible, I encourage people to try to bear with the process and let natural conditions kind of play out. So sometimes we can clearly perceive that they're suffering, that they're in pain, that they're uncomfortable, but you don't really know the full experience of it. And I think ethically, I side on not taking the life, not intentionally taking the life, even if it's motivated by compassion or mercy. So I'm an advocate of just letting nature take its course and providing as much comfort as one possibly can. Let's see. I think this is my friend Misa here. Greetings, Tanajan. I discussed today about Buddha establishing Sangha and slowly establishing rules for the monks, as some people see it as just guidelines. Let's see. So basically, he lays down the rules for monks and basic training for lay people. Well, Misa, yeah, he's got a community, and there's many different reasons why he lays down the Vinaya rule for that. I mean, one is, um, create shared standards, harmony, clarity of how it is that we're going to live together. Um, and as in the very early part of his monastic communities, there were a few people, and the monks were uh, quite talented uh, spiritually, and there were a lot of arhants and little problems. So there initially weren't a lot of rules, and then as problems occurred and the community grew, and the stature of the community grew, the Buddha would deal with problems as they came up and establish rules and protocols uh, for the monastic community. So, and it's clear that the rules just weren't there for the internal sake of the community. It also addressed how the community interfaced with the community at large. Um, so, and then for the laity, there's really nothing other than the guidance of the 5 precepts. But the Buddha sort of the Buddhist conception is that uh, sila And in the case of the monastics, we call it Vinaya, or the monastic discipline. It works in conjunction with the Dhamma, like two hands um, washing each other. Like it's an integrated thing. So the Vinaya by itself doesn't provide the full support for how it is that we should live in the world and what's the correct course of action. Just like a legal code, I don't think it can completely encompass how it is that we should live in the world. And so you have sila, you have morality, you have vinaya, or the monastic discipline, but that works in conjunction with the Dhamma. So, and so like a good example of this is with the first precept we talked about the other day. The injunction is uh, to make a commitment to refrain from intentionally taking the life of another living creature. And there's not a lot of detail in that. In the monks' rules, there is more detail about that. But that whole precept works in conjunction with the injunction to also develop right intention. So goodwill, non-ill will towards other beings, and ahimsa, harmlessness towards other living beings. So, and you take up both are all that the whole spectrum of everything sort of connected to there, the part that could be easily classified as a rule or a precept or sila, and then what can easily be classified as the Dhamma component of that. Those two kind of work together. So, George, good morning. Is nicotine considered an intoxicant? Increasingly so, I would say. Maybe not an intoxicant, but the monks of Ajahn Chah's era, many of them did smoke, and there's still monks in Thailand that smoke. I don't think they think of it as an intoxicant, like that it's causing heedlessness or clouding the mind. So, and I was never a regular smoker, so I don't know. It's a stimulant, um, but the culture in Thailand is kind of changing, and um, I think fewer and fewer monks are smoking because, similar to the way we hold it here in America, it's seen more and more as such an unhealthy habit, that there's encouragement and campaigns and a discouragement for monks to smoke. And in the Ajahn Chah monasteries, we have an agreement not to smoke. Like, we can't establish new rules, as like we don't say that this applies to all other monastics or monasteries, but um, we don't smoke in our monasteries. So, oh, good morning, Jennifer. Good to see you on here. Okay, wow. I think I got way behind in the chat here, but I'm starting to run out of time today, so I think we'll leave it at that. I see Scott's got a. I feel like my meditation improved when I stopped trying to be a great meditator. It might seem counterintuitive, but the thought of just being a bad meditator took away a lot of the trying so hard. I think a lot of people are in that boat, Scott. So you do want to try hard. You do want to put forth effort. But what has to be adjusted, and it sounds like part of what that adjustment is you're changing your idealism, striving to sort of meet some ideal in your mind. And being a great meditator is it's probably hard to strive for that without some self concept built into that. So that muddies or sabotages the effort. It's a defilement, I guess, of the effort, doing it for oneself. So we have to learn how to do this work in as selfless a way as possible. And of course, we can't help it. We start off wanting to be a great meditator for ourselves, or for the concept of ourself. But eventually, we need to kind of purify that sort of relationship. Okay, well, I see a few more, but we're kind of getting on, so I'm going to leave that for today. And a few more about smoking, huh? Since 1967, I believe they don't smoke in Ajahn Monastery. I've never had a year for it, but you might be right. I know that the Western monks tried to convince Ajahn Chah to quit smoking, and he did. And then I think he snuck a few smokes here or there, but I think before he, I think he quit before he got sick. All right, have a good day, everyone, and we'll see you all tomorrow. All right, bye for now.